I was on administrative leave for like maybe 30 days. And then, my first day, walking back into the department, I basically walked right into, a continuation of the internal affairs investigation into our relationship. And I felt like because she had died and there was no reason to continue the relationship with the department. I don't think the department wanted me around. I don't think that law enforcement was really a really great, smart choice for me in the first place. And so, I took that as a really good sign that I needed to go back to the drawing board and, think about how I fit in to our community, our species, our fit into my own life. And, put myself in a position to put good things into the world and not to be a party to, the loss of life and tragedy.
Welcome to the Transition Drill Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Pantiani. I appreciate you taking the time to watch, so let's get into this. Before we can go forward, we got to go backwards. So let's go back to, where did you grow up?
Yeah, so I grew up in Ashland, Oregon, which is just a really small town in Oregon, right over the California border on I-5.
Big family, small family?
Yeah, small family. So I was an only child. And I was raised by a single mother.
What was in growing up? What were you thinking was going to be your adult life? Let's take it even sports. What kind of encompassed your young life?
Yeah, so it was a really artistic community. So I did do some sports early on, but I ended up finding kind of my place in theater and did a lot of acting in the community theaters.
Did you ever think that would potentially be a career, or did you ever want to venture down more of that path?
Yeah, that was my kind of my aspirational life goal, was to become an actor and really hone the craft and really zero in on the concept of embodying a different person and what that journey is about, and understanding that individual's journey, and then how that drives the art of them portraying them as a person on stage or on film or whatever that project looks like.
What took you away from that path?
Really, pretty simply, it was the September 11th attacks. I took about 30 days after that. I turned 18 on August 31st of 2001.
So literally right before it.
Right before it. Graduated high school, the June prior to that. Registered for the draft, on August 30th. And then, 10, 11 days later, of course, 2020 hindsight, right? But what to me at the time felt like my generation's Pearl Harbor, right? I felt like just quite simply we were under attack. I wasn't thinking a lot about the geopolitics behind why or whom or where, just surface level stuff. And I remember had this conversation with an adult that I knew at the time, probably in his early 50s, and he pulled me aside and he had a very serious conversation with me about becoming a conscientious objector, because the draft was coming. And, he was obviously reflecting on his experiences during Vietnam. And really, that conversation had kind of an odd opposite effect on me, to where I felt like if my country was in need of my service, then I felt it was imperative that I rise to that occasion, answer the call.
So it had for him, where he was trying to dissuade you from going in the military, it almost was more of a catalyst for you to go in.
Yeah, it was.
Did you have any other military connection in your family growing up? Any relatives?
No, No.
Was it ever on your radar before 9/11, other than registering for the draft?
The closest I'd come was a friend of mine, about 6-9 months prior to 9/11. He was a grade ahead of me in school. He joined the National Guard. And I had seriously considered that for about, 5 minutes. And
pondered that one for a long time, right?
Yeah. And I was like, no, the military experience is just not, what I want for my life. And I kind of just totally shelved that idea until 9/11. And I don't know, it just flipped a switch in my head.
So you went in and enlisted after 9/11, correct?
I did. Yeah.
And what were you thinking at that point in time? Were you thinking that this was just going to be a short-term thing for you, or were you going to potentially look at longer perspectives as far as like a career out of it?
No, I don't think I was ever looking at the military as a career opportunity. I always kind of saw it as like it was going to be a chapter. I kind of felt like if I had that experience and then maybe had a university experience afterward, I would be coming at that with a little more maturity and background, and maybe get more out of that education. Maybe it would give me a firmer foundation for, a more productive future.
What was your decision factor on the branch?
It's a really funny story.
Okay.
So thanks for asking. We'll
check that one off the script that I made sure I asked that right question.
Yeah, you nailed it. So I went to the Army, Air Force, and Navy recruiters. I skipped the Marine Corps, and I wasn't none of what they were telling me was really resonating with what I wanted to achieve. And then my friend wanted to go look at the Marine Corps, and so I went with him. And I remember very vividly the Marine Corps recruiter, kind of walking out from the back office area, and he called my friend back, and he looks at me. He's like, "Do you want to talk to a recruiter?" And I said, "No, I think I'm all set." He's like, "All right, well, I'm not going to waste your time. Don't waste ours." And he turned around and he left. And I was instantly interested, right? And then I think I had a 10-day think about it period, maybe, after that interaction. And I went back to that same recruiter and I said, okay, I don't want to waste your time, and I'm interested now. And it was a pretty quick conversation. I think I joined in under 2 hours, which, given the I don't know, the importance of that decision, I think it was made over a relatively quick period of time.
So between talking to the Army, Navy, and Air Force and talking to the Marine Corps, what time gap are we talking about? A day, a week?
Really hard to say. The whole process took, 30 days. I think I joined October 10th. I ended up signing up.
So basically, once you made the decision this is what you were going to do, there wasn't a lot of dragging your feet, so to speak.
No, it was just really about narrowing it down, like what path that was going to look like, what path I was going to take there.
So how long did you end up doing in the Marine Corps?
I did 4 years.
Any thoughts coming close to that enlistment or the end of that enlistment to stay in longer?
Yeah, I did think about it. It's a relatively Spartan lifestyle, and I think I was a little burnt out on that you're basically constantly and always on duty or at the beck and call and the needs of the Corps, and that if any point in time you need to drop what you're doing and you're at work. And I had I had other things I wanted to do. I kind of wanted to re-explore my artistic side. I really like cooking, and I lived in a barracks. I didn't have a kitchen, and I like to make my own food. So there was just
MREs weren't going to cut it.
MREs weren't cutting it. The chow hall wasn't doing it for me. The powdered eggs, the whole culinary experience in the Marine Corps was, it fed me, but it wasn't feeding my creativity. So I guess it was mostly it was a lifestyle choice to end that experience.
So when you got out, what were you thinking? or did you have anything lined up at that when you ended your enlistment?
Yeah, that's really I feel like that's really where I dropped the ball on myself. Is the Marine Corps gave me really great habits, a really great foundation, really great, I'll repeat myself. It's just like really good life habits, and man, I don't even know, for lack of direction or lack of definition or how it played out like this. But when I got out, I just didn't have like a plan. And that's really where I failed myself, because I felt like if I had an idea as to what I wanted to accomplish, and even just a rough couple of steps as to like goals to hit in completion of that goal, I feel like I would have been a lot better off. But I didn't. I just kind of I heard one of your guests talk about surfing and the experience of coming off that board and tumbling around in the wave. And it doesn't matter who you are going into that, that's humbling, and that was kind of coming out of the Marine Corps. I kind of had all this momentum, and then I just kind of tumbled ass over myself, and just didn't know what the hell I was doing with myself.
Did you, or was your idea to return back home to Oregon?
No, I didn't know what my goals were anymore, because I'd really lost touch with, because my trajectory was one of an artist, and there just was no space for that in my Marine Corps experience whatsoever. And so I had really, cut off, so much of my personality to survive that Marine Corps experience that I didn't, I came out of it without goals. And so what I ended up doing was just trying to monetize the skill set that I had gained, through the Marine Corps. So, I did security contracting and kind of all over the place for a lot of different companies, and went from place to place and tried different things. And it was about paying bills and monetizing my skill sets, and not like growing or really achieving any kind of goals or experiencing any kind of momentum in life.
When you got out, where were you living?
I went to Knoxville, Tennessee. I worked at Oak Ridge for the Department of Energy, and just did some contracting work. I was a canine handler in the Marine Corps, and so I kept doing that. I kept handling dogs for them.
You were saying this, you mentioned previously, you were monetizing your skill set that you had, but ultimately it wasn't feeding the artistic side of you. So were you exploring other options to continue down the artistic realm, or what were you thinking at that time?
No, I think I was really in just kind of recovery mode, because I don't know, the abruptness with which I went from being a high school student and an artist to a Marine to a combatant to now a veteran, but like I had no idea what that identity was. Like, what is a 22, 23-year-old veteran? I didn't have there was no archetype for that, So I was just kind of
to overgeneralize it in a weird way. There aren't probably many stereotypical successful 22-year-old veterans to model yourself after.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're out there, and man, I wish that I knew what they knew, but I was pretty directionless for a really long time, and yeah, that can be, well, I've been listening to your podcast, and you talk about, the importance of having a plan and the importance of preparing right now, because, in a career in law enforcement, in a career in the military, in any of these industries, in any kind of first responder, to a degree, your employment is at the will and whim of a lot of conditions and elements, be they political, be they, physical limitations, injury. A car accident can take you out of the game just as quickly as, an interaction goes sideways, or a lawsuit, or, so I think what you say about prepare now, because you never know when that transition is going to hit you. And that is the absolute truth. And I mean, life is about, it's not about, how you're doing when things are going easily. It's about how you bounce back and how you recover from the things that knock you down. That's I feel like what really, what feeds your legacy as an individual.
So how did you end up in law enforcement through this gap of directionless as you?
Yeah. So, I had been working with explosives for a while, and through my military experience, I was on the receiving end of some explosives, and so I incurred some injuries from that, and some post-traumatic stress. So some mental scars. And where am I going with this? I found myself at a transition point, as we do, and this was in 2007 timeframe, so I'd been out of the Marine Corps for about a year. And I decided that...
and you're still in Tennessee at this time.
I was in Tennessee. And I wasn't loving my employment there. So I guess I found myself asking myself, if I hadn't joined the Marine Corps, there right outside of high school, what is something I would have liked to have done? And I really liked riding bicycles. It was one of the things I liked to do. And there was a bicycle shop. And I remember growing up when I was really young, I just thought it would be the coolest thing in the world to work in a bicycle shop. And so I said, hey, I'm gonna give myself that experience. I want that for myself. And so I decided I wanted to work in a bicycle shop, and I kind of landed on Boulder, Colorado, as a good place to do that, because there's a lot of bicycles. And then I became a ski instructor there, and I kind of spent 2 years just relaxing and not working around bombs, and
which is important.
It's important to give yourself some slack every now and then, especially when you see burnout creeping up. And so that was a good little respite. And then it felt like it became time to explore the idea of having another job that has a lot of responsibility, and where you have the opportunity to change lives and to impact your community, and I had really enjoyed my time at Boulder, and so it felt like a really natural transition to become a police officer there, and so that's what I did.
And what year did you start there?
Started there in I think I went to the police academy through 2009, and then I was a police officer, late 09 and then into 010. And then that employment, that did not last long.
And we're going to get into that story. Your initial feelings getting back into that structured environment, somewhat similar to the Marine Corps and a paramilitary organization, did you feel it being a positive for you, or were you feeling like, ooh, maybe I made a bad decision?
That's a great question. Yeah. So for me, it was kind of a mixed bag, because of my Marine Corps experience, it's very easy for me to click into fitting in with those environments. And I definitely know how to be in a structured environment and excel in that, and, be a good follower, be a good leader, fill in all the roles. So yeah, on the one hand, it was like, oh, this is easy. This is familiar for me. And, on the other, I felt, I was a little, to a degree, I felt like I was maybe selling myself out a little bit, or just kind of going back to monetizing a skill set that I already had versus like exploring what like my real purpose is about.
So definitely something where maybe you felt cheating yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe just, kind of taking like a slightly easier path.
So getting into this story, you ended up with your training officer and you guys got into a relationship, a female officer. I'll let you explain what it culminated in.
Yeah. So, pretty simply, I engaged in a physical relationship with my training officer in violation of department policy. And, when an internal affairs investigation came down, she, I guess the idea of not being a police officer or losing her job was more than she wanted to experience, and so she chose to kill herself. And and that was pretty much the end of my law enforcement experience.
Taking it back just a little bit, how long had she been a cop at that point?
Like in the neighborhood of 10 years.
And was it for certain with your agency having that extra relationship, so to speak, that it was guaranteed she was going to lose her job? Or was that just kind of her impression what was going to happen?
Yeah. No, I don't know that was guaranteed. I think that was what she was concerned about happening.
So how long, after she took her life, did you know right away you were just going to exit law enforcement?
No. Well, gosh, I don't know.
Let me ask a different question. Did you keep working for the agency after she killed herself?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
No.
Was there a period where you were just on a quote unquote administrative leave time and then you just chose not to continue after that? Or was your agency actually pushing for you to leave?
Yeah. So I was on administrative leave for like maybe 30 days. And then, my first day, walking back into the department, I basically walked right into, a continuation of the internal affairs investigation into our relationship. And I felt like because she had died and there was just, I guess there was no reason to continue the relationship with the department. I don't think the department wanted me around. I don't think that law enforcement was really a really great, smart choice for me in the first place. And so, I took that as a really good sign that I needed to go back to the drawing board and, think about how I fit in to our community, our species, our fit into my own life, and put myself in a position to put good things into the world and not to be a party to the loss of life and tragedy.
Using a cue of what you're doing today, in that experience, going through that trauma of your lover, your partner killing herself, did you get support from your agency?
No.
I know you were on administrative leave and they had to do an internal affairs investigation, but did they offer any type of trauma support?
I mean, we had, the EAP, which a lot of departments have. And, for people who aren't familiar with that, it's a great tool. It's the employee assistance program, and that's a part of your compensation package, whether you work for law enforcement or really most any reputable company now. It's just like your healthcare, and I took advantage of my EAP sessions, and we had a really good EAP counselor. I can't speak highly enough about the importance of getting, good professional mental health help. But also in that, the importance of having like a good relationship with that person. And that, like, I know I've had more bad, counselors than I've had good ones, but like those good ones were so important, so integral to like my self-improvement that like it's definitely it's worth the journey.
Going back to your time coming out of the Marine Corps, did you ever seek any counseling then?
Gosh, not enough. Yeah.
But you sought some?
No, not until quite a few years later. Yeah, I mean now certainly I engage in mental health and talk about those experiences and others throughout my history. But no, it took a long time for me to acknowledge the value of mental health, that it was even something that could help me, and then acknowledge that I was a person that needed help, and that I think when you strengthen yourself and you ready yourself, especially at a young age, against something like a combat experience, or being on the road every day and having your life in peril. You don't want to acknowledge that there is any part of you that has vulnerability, that there's any part of you that needs help, because that is not your 9 to 5, you're bulletproof, and you
Right.
gotta be, right. And I guess what I'm saying is in our off time, in our recovery time, it's what we do in that recovery time that dictates our ability to perform, when we're on the job.
So coming out of that transition, what were you thinking was going to be your future? Or what did you go into immediately?
I mean, that got bleak right at that point. And I didn't know. Still, like the theme, I think, of this podcast is lack of a plan, and lack of direction. And so I didn't know. So, just did what I had to do, continued monetizing my skill sets, went back to security consulting work, had some fun experiences, had some not great experiences, had some adventures, but was paying the bills and not feeding the soul, not growing. So
what was the catalyst that took you towards, and I'll loosely call it, you're now giving trauma assistance, if that's a general umbrella to put it under?
Yeah. So it was a couple of catalytic events. I had a business partner who was a former Marine, and he had sold his security business. He was getting into real estate. He appeared to be having a lot of success. And he was the kind of guy that you look up to, that you're like that guy's discipline level is next level, and he's just checking all the boxes, and then he just really out of the blue, he shot himself, really out of the blue. And I was pretty angry. Because of that, because some other stuff, I was pretty angry, and I went up to the VA.
Do you think you were angry at that time because almost in a sense you felt like you weren't in control of certain things?
Sure. Yeah, I think that I think that can definitely be a reason that why people do get angry, is to elicit and feel some type of a control over a situation. And yeah, I think that's insightful. I couldn't disagree with it.
So you went to the VA?
Yeah. So I went to the VA, and the director up there has office hours, and I drove up there. I was frustrated about their being ineffective in preventing suicide amongst combat veterans, and because, I mean, simply put, the VA is the most well-funded healthcare organization in the history of humanity, and they're sitting on top of the highest rate of suicide, right? And so that math problem wasn't working out for me, and I reflected on well, what if I was failing the Marine Corps, who was my employer, the way that the VA is failing me? what would they say to me? How would they treat me? What would their reaction be to that? And so basically I took that, with that concept, I took that to the director of the VA. And I commenced to chew his ass like a Marine would, like, a private, except this guy was, I think a former colonel from the Army. So he's not really used to getting his ass chewed anymore. And so that was, not great that I did that. And I was returning from that experience and trying to decide, on one hand, what am I going to do with all this anger, with all this energy? How does this end up? And then on the other hand, trying to basically asking myself, whose job is it to take responsibility for the rate of suicide amongst these veterans, for the suicidality, for the loss of life, and this tragedy, and these two concepts swirling around in my head. Finally, I guess I arrived at the conclusion that I needed to get involved in suicide prevention, and that's what I very quickly did.
That experience with the VA, from your own personal side of it, though, did you stay with the VA and keep going through counseling, or was that kind of the last straw and you walked away and went and got counseling elsewhere?
Yeah, so I still get counseling through the VA, and that has been like a huge part of my journey is deconflicting, my anger with their ineffectuality and then, I also engaging in the modalities and the treatments that they have. And I guess where I'm going with this is I started realizing that the treatments I was engaging in weren't working because I didn't want them to, right? And because I was coming into them with the idea that this isn't going to work. Maybe I don't even need it. Or if I do, this isn't the right thing for me, right? They're incapable of helping me, I think was my point of view. And when I started my frustrations and disappointments with the VA are real, but they don't have to be the whole definition of my experience with them, So when I started allowing it to potentially work, it started working. And I was able to lengthen my fuse. I was able to start leaving some of my triggers and things that upset me, behind and starts to give them context so where I could understand them better and then react less.
Staying in that realm, that line of work, have you had continued conversations with that director of the VA, and has it turned positive, or did that one incident kind of define the two of you and nothing's moved on from there?
Yeah, no, we've had interactions since that were more positive, more collaborative, and beyond that, I mean, I expressed a lot of frustration toward my VA practitioners over the years, and in their being ineffective, and I've started to as I've started to actually engage in my mental health therapies, I'm able to thank them and give them credit. And being thankful is huge, and being able to give them thankfulness for hanging in there with me and putting up with my crappy mood, and then understanding why, and then treating me on the backside.
I like to, at the end of an episode, give the guest an opportunity to give their advice, but I think this is a good point right now, because you bring up a great point. Was obviously there was frustrations dealing with the VA, but in hindsight, now that you've been able to look back on it with some retrospect, you realize that you were as equal part of the problem, because you weren't open, you weren't embracing it 100%. What advice would you give to somebody? What are the catalysts, or I guess it's easy to just tell somebody, hey, you need to be open to it, but how do you really do that?
Well, I think it's about deciding what you want your experience to look like, and I guess I found myself asking myself, is this anger serving me? Is my dysfunction making me happy? Is it making my life easier? Is it serving anybody? And when you discover that it's not, then it's a lot easier to literally want to change, not just be willing to, but like actually wanting to so much that you're enjoying the experience of doing it because it is like positive on every level.
Were you able to get there on your own, or did it take the help of a specific person? Was there that one key person that came into your life or came into your therapy that kind of changed your path?
For me, it was skipping off bottom and, getting close enough to it where you get little tastes of it every now and then, and being in that moment and just saying, okay, I'm at a transition point here. I've got a couple of trajectories, right? This trajectory looks, pretty painful, like it might result in my death, right? This trajectory that could result in incarceration, right? Well, what's this trajectory look like? Oh, well, this pays the bills and it makes me happy, right? And like, what do I actually want the next 5, 10, 15, 30 years of my life to look like? Do I want to be around to raise my child? Like, do I want to be walking around with a felony and DUIs hanging around my neck, or do I want to be able to get a job or start a business, drive a car?
So, but it comes down to, you've got to get there, and whatever it takes for each of us to get to that point is probably going to be a little different. But the start of it sounds like just sitting down and being honest with yourself.
I think so. For me, from my experience, there was no person who could explain it to me, at least in a way that was compelling enough for me to change.
You mentioned raise a child. Do you have children now?
Yeah, I have a daughter, yeah.
Was she in your life at that point in time, or was that more of a rhetorical statement of caring for my child?
No, I mean, she was born in 2011, so like she was definitely a part of my wanting to, stay in the show and demonstrate to her what, a meaningful, rewarding life can look like.
Children will do that to you. I mean, yeah. I'm definitely not advocating for anybody who's struggling with mental health to go and have a child, because that will be that catalyst. But speaking from somebody who does have children, they will change your life. They will change your perspective on what is important, not just for you, when you've got somebody else relying on you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, purpose and belonging, it provides both of those things. And I think those are some of the most important things for a person to have in their life.
So what was your first venture in trauma support from a professional standpoint, in the sense that you were now the facilitator of it, not the receiver of it?
Yeah, so I found this nonprofit organization located here in Larimer County, Colorado, called the Alliance for Suicide Prevention. And the idea there is that Colorado actually sits in the top 10 states in the union for deaths by suicide. And then Larimer County is in the top 10 counties in Colorado. So right here in Larimer County, we're actually kind of living amongst the tip of the spear for suicidality amongst our species. And so for me, that makes this a target-rich environment for improvement. And it's a great test bed to create experimental treatments and to identify their efficacy, and then document them so that other jurisdictions can implement, our tactics, our techniques to address the suicidality in their own regions.
So what year was it that you walked in their door and said, I want to help?
Yeah, 2019.
And what did it take for you to then become able to be a provider or a helper? What did you have to do?
Well, so everything I do is through the lens of peer support. So I don't have a degree in anything. I went to college, didn't finish. So I can work with anyone that is of a population I have occupied, and I can talk about what I know about that. Right. But I don't go outside my populations, because I don't have the credentials, training, relevant experience to help a person through something that I haven't experienced. So it's all through the peer support lens. And then, so with that said, I do
Are those regulations imposed by the nonprofit organization or by the mental health community of professionals?
It's not even regulations.
Okay.
I could be wrong. I don't even know if that's written anywhere.
Okay.
It is just simply a statement of fact at the end of the day. So what I do is I engage in crisis intervention, or upstream prevention efforts, for basically three populations, and that's adult men, first responders, and military veterans.
And are you on basically like on an on-call 24 hours a day system?
Yeah, so kind of on call, in that I'm the only person in the county right now that does what I do. And so like we have our police departments here, and one of our paramedic companies and stuff. They will call me out if they encounter a veteran on a scene who's in crisis, and they think I can help. I will respond to that scene and help out with that. And then in addition to that, so I've partnered with UNC, and so they have their Air Force ROTC and Army ROTC here, and so we have trained all of them in suicide prevention training, with the idea that that's the future leadership core of the U.S. military. So we're getting suicide prevention training into them prior to them becoming leaders, prior to them becoming veterans. So that's super upstream. That's been a really successful project. And then I get involved in community building efforts. We know that purpose and belonging are the two most important tools that we have in addressing acute depression and suicidality. So we've got experiential groups that do fly fishing type of things, we do retreats. We do a lot of hiking, camping type of things. And
only for veterans, or is it open to multiples?
Yeah, so kind of depends on the event and who I'm partnering with, because I partner with a lot of other organizations to achieve these goals. But no is the simple answer. So no, I do stuff for first responders. I do stuff for veterans. Do stuff for everybody. Some of the things I do, I really like to get veterans and first responders, and then clinicians who serve them together in a non-clinical setting, so that they get to kind of destigmify one another, learn more about each other, and hopefully improve the clinician's ability to serve the first responders, but also the first responders and veterans' willingness to be served and willingness to engage with those clinicians, and destigmify the whole mental health process.
The company you're with, is it, and I don't want to make it this or that, if you are a veteran or a first responder, well, not a first responder because it doesn't apply to the VA. If you're a veteran, should your first path be to the VA, or should it be to an organization like Allied?
Yeah, so the VA serves approximately 1/3 of all the veterans in the United States. So I guess that's the first thing to keep in mind, is not all veterans are actually qualified for services from the VA.
Okay.
To address your question of who your first call is, if you're an individual, any individual experiencing crisis, the first thing you need to do is address that, ideally with like the crisis line. In I think it's June or July, we've got 988 coming out, and that's going to be the new 911 for mental health crisis. Right.
Is that going to be nationwide, or
it is nationwide? Yeah.
So it's first I've heard of it.
Yeah, it was the bill passed kind of recently, and then it's just been a process of like rolling that out and getting everything online. And so the information I'm being told is that's supposed to be rolling out in July, and that should be nationwide. So get involved with some crisis services. If you're in Larimer County and you don't want to use the crisis line, or for some reason that's not working for you, I'm available to you, and you can reach out to the Alliance for Suicide Prevention. We're at suicideprevent.org. And like I said, I can do one-on-one crisis intervention stuff, but my whole goal is I it's not really my role so much to like treat or serve people. It's really more about getting them in touch with the right resources for them, and then maybe helping them out with like some confidence on engaging with those resources if they're resistant.
Now, from that work, you're now doing additional work with, is it the Phoenix Group?
Yeah, so Phoenix Resilience is a new company being started up here in the Fort Collins area, and the concept there is to provide resilience types of training and coaching to, it's to the first responder community, but also broader than that. It's also kind of for any person or organization that has an experience that they feel like resilience would help them recover from. So, I mean, here I'm thinking of like educational, institutions where if maybe they have, a traumatic event or, forbid like an active shooter situation, to help that organization get back on track and back on mission.
So I get, from a layman's perspective, what's the difference between the two organizations?
Yeah, well, really simply. So the Alliance for Suicide Prevention is a nonprofit here in Larimer County that serves our county, and all of our services are free. Phoenix Resilience has recently retained me to help them out with some projects, and that's a for-profit LLC, and they provide trainings and coaching across the country, and actually retreats internationally.
But is it more like you talked about previously? Is Phoenix Resilience more trying to address the upstream aspect in the sense of getting you ahead of trauma before it's encompassing your life?
Yeah, absolutely. Phoenix Resilience itself is all about your ability to weather and recover from traumatic events, and resilience is something that you can work on pre and post, right? And even during, actually. But it's really I like to make the analogy that, if you strengthen and train and strengthen and train, you will have the opportunity to be strong once, right? But if that event, if you can't recover from that event, then that's one and done. So I feel like resiliency is not more, but equally as important as training, because it's about how you recover and actually how you perform and survive through the event.
Long term, where do you see your role in this? Do you see yourself going back to school and increasing your degree aspect and increasing your work that way, or continuing on the level that you're at now at the peer support level?
There's something I love about the freedom of being in peer support, and to where, I had a client call me out in the middle of the night recently, and went over to his house, and he really needed to go to the emergency room, but he needed to go to emergency room an hour and a half away. And there was no hesitation. I didn't have to think about insurance or the implications on my licensure or my employment or anything. I'm like, let's go. And we got in my car and I took him there. And it's being able to be a peer supporter. There's no one can come in after the fact and say, oh, well, you did this, that, and the other procedure wrong, therefore we can recall your license, therefore we're impacting your employment. And then ultimately what that leads to is they get to dictate how I interact with my client, right? As long as I stay within the boundaries of my capabilities, I don't, I'll go to and obtain any type of training or education that will sharpen my pencil and improve my abilities. But I don't see a need to go and actually obtain a master's degree unless someone convinces me to otherwise.
Nothing has brought you to that decision point yet. You're able to find success at the level that you're at right now.
I am, and I'll say further that, you know, there are plenty of people to help in my little slice of the pie, right? I don't need to broaden out to the entire spectrum of humanity. I can focus on veterans and first responders for the rest of my life, and I'm sure that'll be plenty of work for me.
In hindsight, any regrets getting out of the military or getting out of law enforcement?
Hard to say regrets, you know. I guess I certainly would have liked my law enforcement career to not have ended the way it did. Certainly for everyone involved. But now that I'm in a place where I'm able to really draw on my lived experience to benefit others, I really feel like I'm tapping into my purpose and what is my capability. So it's hard to say, like, what of this journey was necessary for me to get to where I am, you know? So I guess I can't talk about regrets as much as there's things I wish I'd done better. And now I'm in a great position to share that so that other people can make better decisions, I hope.
And are you still actively seeking counseling for your own trauma issues, however you want to put it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the first, like, really important things that you can do is name the things that are bothering you, right? So post-traumatic stress, yeah, check. Survivor's guilt, that's a thing, right? Moral injury, right? And that's kind of a newer term to me, but I think it's really descriptive. It's really important for us to explore what it is, the things that are bothering us, and then having a well-educated, well-experienced guide through these things, you know, it just makes the process all the easier and all the faster.
You say moral injury.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first time I've heard that terminology. What does that encapsulate?
Yeah, so it's the concept of having had to have done something that is not in keeping with your moral compass. And so here's a perfect example of that. I work with a veteran that was never deployed overseas during the Vietnam conflict, but his job was, he was a loader of munitions onto aircraft. And so he experienced vicarious trauma through, you know, the experience of having loaded those munitions that then took life, right? And so that's what feeds his moral injury. And so, you know, for decades, his experience was that of I'm in pain and I don't know why. And now that we have the language to explain it, well, you're probably experiencing some moral injury, and that's what this looks like, and this is how you can address it. You're probably experiencing some vicarious trauma. This is what leads to that. This is how you can address that. Now that we have the language and the modalities to address these things, we're in a better position to help people recover from them, you know. And so modalities like EMDR, which is an acronym, I don't remember what it is, but you know, if you've got some traumatic events, well, if you've got post-traumatic stress in your life, EMDR is about re-experiencing that in a safe way so that your brain learns that every time X happens, not necessarily does that elicit, you know, a traumatic event, right? Dialectical behavioral therapy is another modality that's really important, and in terms of your thinking about a situation and how you fit into it, you know, and really taking like really purposeful responsibility for your actions and your thoughts and your interactions.
I've heard, at least with EMDR, going down that path, those sessions are very intense and very emotionally draining. So they're definitely something that will take you down. I don't want to say a traumatic journey, but it's going to take you through your trauma in a very deep journey. If I'm understanding it correctly. Yeah,
it will fully put you back into the emotional state that you were in when you were in that moment. And it can be exhausting, it can be difficult, it can be very activating. And so you definitely you want to be doing that with a practitioner that you trust. You need to have kind of a safety word in place where you can kind of back out of the experience. Because for those who haven't experienced it, what it is it's talk therapy, but it's augmented with either an auditory or visual stimulus that I don't know the science behind it, but the easiest way for me to describe it is it's kind of like clinical hypnosis, where it makes you very it puts you back in the place, kind of in the headset that you were in that moment when you received that kind of mental scar, so that you can kind of begin to heal it.
So for you today, are you still seeking to feed your artistic side, or does what you're doing kind of do that?
Yeah, it does. It does. It's because I use artistic and creativity kind of interchangeably here, and it is because it's so much fun. I get to utilize all of my training, right, that I've through 2 police academies and all of my training and experience. I'm able to draw on all of that, and I'm able to like fully engage in like full creativity mode, think outside the box, get involved in problem solving, which is something that I love. And then the most rewarding thing is then, when I'm working with an individual who, at one point was, on a track of self-destruction, and whose potential was just kind of being squandered. I can then watch them like engage with their own purpose, identify their own strengths, and come to terms with their past and learn what it's like to engage with their future. And in a small way, I get to be a part of that and what it is that they create for themselves. And that's extremely rewarding. And that kind of just, I don't know, it keeps me going, gets me out of bed in the morning.
If you had to choose with continuing doing the peer support or putting more effort towards, as you refer it, the upstream resilience building, which would you prefer?
I think I'll always work in both because I think one feeds the other. I think that when I'm interacting with a person who's in like a suicidal crisis, that's a really fertile environment for learning for me. And then when I'm engaged in upstream preventative stuff, all the knowledge that I gain from that helps me to engage in the crisis, right? And because that fuels the solutions for that crisis.
You obviously mentioned having a daughter now, which gives you a new mission as a father and a parent. Have you taken on or brought anything new into your life that brings you that joy that maybe you weren't doing in the past through your process?
Yeah. So I think learning about the importance of self-care and engaging in mindfulness has been a huge part of my journey. I think that whole bulletproof mentality, a part of that was just straight up refusing to take very good care of myself. And because maybe I needed to prove to myself that I could, I can go 3 days without sleeping. I don't need to, but for some reason I want to prove to myself that I can, and so, so to address your question, yeah, I guess I'm learning that resilience and self-care is it's like a muscle like anything else, and it's about small repetitive efforts elicit big gains in the end.
So in wrapping it up, obviously I mentioned this previously, but any last words of advice that you could, you want to give to somebody, either veteran, law enforcement? The faster that you can figure out what it is that you want out of your experience in this world, the sooner you can start working toward that. And don't be afraid to learn yourself and to advocate for having the things and the experiences that you want and to becoming the person that you want to be. You do not have to settle for being anything other than. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Yeah, thank you for your time. I appreciate you watching. But before you go, if you like the video, please hit that subscribe button. Also, any comments are appreciated. Thank you.